Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Lesbian Book Club podcast. It is your host, Haylie, and it's just me today, which is so sad. We don't have Lauren. If you remember last week, I was ill. I didn't have a voice, and that ended up being COVID, which was very sad. And now Lauren's sick, and it's not for me because I haven't seen her. We actually record over Zoom. So it's from some other mystery source, but she didn't have a voice to join us this morning. So we are having a little change of plans, and we're going to push our Mouths of Rain recording to next week. So still be reading that. It is just a really beautiful, wonderful, nutrient-dense anthology, and I promise that you'll get so much out of it. It's a really, really great read, and I'm so thankful for everybody that contributed to that piece of work. And this week, instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this opportunity to do a little poetry reading. And what better person to read than Audre Lorde in our month of Black History? And I'm also going to read a little bit of a poet that I have discovered some of her work, and that is Donika Kelly. She has a book called Bestiary, and I have just kind of fallen in love with some of her poetry. So both of these poets are very well acclaimed, and I cannot wait to get into this with you. So thanks for joining me, and let's do it.
Where are the quiet gays? Where are the quiet gays supposed to go?
Let me begin by telling you a little bit about Audre Lorde, just in case you don't know. So Audre Lorde was with us from 1934 to 1992, so she was here throughout the Civil Rights Movement. And she was a self-described Black lesbian mother, warrior, and poet. And she dedicated both her life and her creative talent to confronting and addressing injustices of racism, sexism, classism, and homophobia. And by the way, I'm getting this biography of her from the Poetry Foundation, if you want to go look at it yourself. Lorde was born in New York City to West Indian immigrant parents, and she attended a Catholic school before graduating from Hunter High School and published her first poem in 17 magazine while she was still a student there. So cool. Of her poetic beginnings, Lorde commented in Black Women Writers, "I used to speak in poetry. I would write poems, I would read poems, I would memorize them. People would say, 'Well, what do you think, Audre? What happened to you yesterday?' And I would recite a poem, and somewhere in that poem would be a line or feeling I would be sharing. In other words, I would literally communicate through poetry. And when I couldn't find the poems to express the things I was feeling, that's what started me writing poetry. And that was when I was 12 or 13. Lorde earned her BA from Hunter College and MLS from Columbia University. She was a librarian in the New York public schools throughout the 1960s. She had 2 children with her husband, Edwin Rollins, a white gay man, lavender marriage, folks, before they divorced in 1970. In 1972, Lorde met her longtime partner, Frances Clayton. She also began teaching as poet in residence at Tougaloo College. Her experiences with teaching and pedagogy, as well as her place as a Black queer woman in white academia, went on to inform her life and work. Indeed, Lorde's contributions to feminist theory, critical race studies, and queer theory intertwine her personal experiences with broader political aims. Lorde articulated early in the intersections of race, class, and gender in canonical essays such as "The Master's Tools Will Not Dismantle the Master's House." Lorde's early collections of poetry include The First Cities, 1968, Cables to Rage, 1970, and From a Land Where Other People Live, 1972, which was nominated for a National Book Award. Later works, including New York Head Shop and Museum, 1974, Coal, 1976, and The Black Unicorn, 1978, included powerful poems of protest. I have a duty, Lorde once stated, to speak the truth as I see it and to share not just my triumphs, not just the things that felt good, but the pain, the intense, often unmitigating pain. Lorde's later poems were often assembled from personal journals. Explaining the genesis of power, a poem about the police shooting of a 10-year-old black child, Lorde discussed her feelings when she learned that the officer involved had been acquitted. A kind of fury rose up in me. The sky turned red. I felt so sick. I felt as if I would drive this car into a wall, into the next person I saw. So I pulled over. I took out my journal just to air some of my fury, to get it out of my fingertips. Those expressed feelings are that poem. Her poetry, and indeed all of her writing, according to contributor Joan Martin in Black Women Writers 1950 to 1980, a critical evaluation, rings with passion, sincerity, perception, and depth of feeling. Concerned with modern society's tendency to categorize groups of people, Lorde fought the marginalization of such categories as lesbian and black woman. She was central to many liberation movements and activist circles, including second-wave feminism, civil rights, and black cultural movements and struggles for LGBTQ equality. In particular, Lorde's poetry is known for the power of its call for social and racial justice, as well as depictions of queer experience and sexuality. As she told interviewer Charles H. Rowell in Callaloo, "My sexuality is part and parcel of who I am, and my poetry comes from the intersection of me and my worlds. Jesse Helms's objection to my work is not about obscenity or even sex. It is about revolution and change." Lorde was a noted prose writer as well as poet. Her account of her struggle to overcome breast cancer and mastectomy, the Cancer Journals, 1980, is regarded as a major work of illness narrative. In the Cancer Journals, Lorde confronts the possibility of death. Recounting this personal transformation led Lorde to address the silence surrounding cancer, illness, and the lived experience of women. For example, Lorde explained her decision not to wear a prosthesis after undergoing a mastectomy in the journals. Prosthesis offers the empty comfort of nobody will know the difference. But it is that very difference which I wish to affirm because I have lived it and survived it and wish to share that strength with other women. If we are to translate the silence surrounding breast cancer into language and action against this scourge, then the first step is that women with mastectomies must become visible to each other. Lorde's 1982 novel, Zami, A New Spelling of My Name, was described by its publishers as biomythography, combining elements of history, biography, and myth. Sister Outsider, Essays and Speeches, 1984, collected Lorde's nonfiction prose and has become a canonical text in Black studies, women's studies, and queer theory. Another collection of essays, A Burst of Light, 1988, won the National Book Award. The collected poems of Audre Lorde was published in 1997. In 1981, Lorde and fellow writers Cherie Moraga and Barbara Smith founded Kitchen Table Women of Color Press, which was dedicated to furthering the writings of Black feminists. Lorde would also become increasingly concerned over the plight of Black women in South Africa under apartheid, creating sisterhood in support of sisters in South Africa and remaining an active voice on behalf of these women throughout the remainder of her life. Lorde addressed her concerns to not only the United States, but the world, encouraging a celebration of the differences that society instead used as tools of isolation. As Alison Kimmick noted in Feminist Writers, throughout all of Audre Lorde's writing, both nonfiction and fiction, a single theme surfaces repeatedly. The Black lesbian feminist poet activist reminds her readers that they ignore differences among people at their peril. Instead, Lorde suggests differences in race or class must serve as a reason for celebration and growth. Lorde's honors and awards include a fellowship from the National Endowment for the Arts, a professor of English at John Jay College and Hunter College. Lorde was Poet Laureate of New York from 1991 to 1992. Warrior Poet 2006 by Alexis DeVoe is the first full-length biography of Audre Lorde. Wow, what a woman. The concept that she brings up of ignoring differences among people at your own peril, that's very similar to... if you didn't know, the man in charge of TED is stepping down right now, and he's putting out a worldwide search for the new person to take over TED. And he just released a talk. It's a little bit over an hour long. Go listen to it if you haven't. But that's a lot of his message, is just how imperative it is, especially right now, that we overcome this fear addiction that we have, and the way that social media has kind of trained us to interact with each other and scare each other and tease the hate out of one another. We have to overcome that addiction and find the really wonderful web of everything that is great about there being diversity among us, and that nobody is the same, and how we can use that to bring out the best in everybody. And like, in order to save ourselves, we have to bring the best out in everybody, or else this world is going to fail. Anyway, go take a listen if you haven't. Audre Lorde knew that a long time ago. So let's get into some of her poetry. This is Coal by Audre Lorde. I is the total black being spoken from the earth's inside. There are many kinds of open. How a diamond comes into a knot of flame. How a sound comes into a word colored by who pays what for speaking. Some words are open, like a diamond on glass windows, singing out within the crash of passing sun. Then there are words like stapled wagers in a perforated book. Buy and sign and tear apart, and come whatever wills all chances, the stub remains. An ill-pulled tooth with a ragged edge. Some words live in my throat, breeding like adders. Others no sun, seeking like gypsies over my tongue, to explode through my lips like young sparrows bursting from shell. Some words bedevil me. Love is a word, another kind of open. As a diamond comes into a knot of flame, I am black because I come from the earth's inside. Take my word for jewel in your open light. This is A Litany for Survival by Audre Lorde. For those of us who live at the shoreline, standing upon the constant edges of decision, crucial and alone. For those of us who cannot indulge the passing dreams of choice, who love in doorways, coming and going in the hours between dawns, looking inward and outward, at once before and after, seeking a now that can breed futures like bread in our children's mouths, so their dreams will not reflect the death of ours. For those of us who were imprinted with fear like a faint line in the center of our foreheads, learning to be afraid with our mother's milk, for by this weapon, this illusion of some safety to be found, the heavy-footed hoped to silence us. For all of us, this instant and this triumph, we were never meant to survive. And when the sun rises, we are afraid it might not remain. When the sun sets, we are afraid it might not rise in the morning. When our stomachs are full, we are afraid of indigestion. When our stomachs are empty, we are afraid we may never eat again. When we are loved, we are afraid love will vanish. When we are alone, we are afraid love will never return. And when we speak, we are afraid our words will not be heard nor welcomed. But when we are silent, we are still afraid. So it is better to speak, remembering we were never meant to survive. This is Power by Audre Lorde. The difference between poetry and rhetoric is being ready to kill yourself instead of your children. I am trapped on a desert of raw gunshot wounds, and a dead child dragging his shattered black face off the edge of my sleep. Blood from his punctured cheeks and shoulders is the only liquid for miles, and my stomach churns at the imagined taste, while my mouth splits into dry lips without loyalty or reason, thirsting for the wetness of his blood as it sinks into the whiteness of the desert where I am lost, without imagery or magic, trying to make power out of hatred and destruction, trying to heal my dying son with kisses only the sun will bleach his bones quicker. A policeman who shot down a 10-year-old in Queens stood over the boy with his cop shoes in childish blood, and a voice said, "Die, you little motherfucker, and there are tapes to prove it." At his trial, this policeman said in his own defense, "I didn't notice the size nor nothing else, only the color. And there are tapes to prove that too." Today, that 37-year-old white man with 13 years of police forcing was set free by 11 white men who said they were satisfied justice had been done, and one black woman who said they convinced me, meaning they had dragged her 4-foot 10-inch black woman's frame over the hot coals of 4 centuries of white male approval until she let go, the first real power she had ever had, and lined her own womb with cement to make a graveyard for our children. I have not been able to touch the destruction within me, but unless I learn to use the difference between poetry and rhetoric, my power too will run corrupt as poisonous mold or lie limp and useless as an unconnected wire, and one day I will take my teenaged plug and connect it to the nearest socket, raping an 85-year-old white woman who is somebody's mother, and as I beat her senseless and set a torch to her bed, a Greek chorus will be singing in 3/4 time, "Poor thing, she never hurt a soul. What beasts they are." And with that very powerful message from Audre, I'm going to move on to Donika Kelly. Thank you, Audre. Donika Kelly is the author of The Renunciations, winner of the Anisfield Wolf Book Award in Poetry, and Bestiary, the winner of the 2015 Cave Canon Poetry Prize, a Hurston Wright Legacy Award for Poetry, and the Kate Tufts Discovery Award. Kelly's poetry has been a finalist for the National Book Critics Circle Award, the Publishing Triangle Awards, the Lambda Literary Awards, and longlisted for the National Book Award. A Cave Canem Graduate Fellow and member of the Collective Poets at the End of the World, she has received an NEA Fellowship, a Lannan Residency Fellowship, and a Summer Workshop Fellowship for the Fine Arts Work Center. She earned an MFA from the Missioner Center at the University of Texas at Austin and a PhD in English from Vanderbilt University. Her poems have been published in The New Yorker, The Atlantic, The Paris Review, and elsewhere. Donika lives in Iowa City with her wife, the nonfiction writer Melissa Fabos, and is an associate professor in the English department at the University of Iowa, where she teaches creative writing. I'm going to read 2 of Donika's poems, and the first is called "What is the Measure?" This is for M, it says. I catalog what I cannot capture. The sun, its ragged stumble into rock face, the precise elevation of this plateau or the next, the sea, of course, against which everything is measured. My tools are insufficient, inexact. For instance, there is no way to measure the peak against the distance from the tip of one ring finger to the other. No matter. My arm's position outstretched, limp, akimbo. For instance, there is no way to weigh the earth pushed out of earth against the gravity of my body, its bones, its sacs, its meat, and animating light. I submit, I do not constitute the mountain. This, in spite of the palette of old quilts and newly fallen maple leaves I've made at its immeasurable base. I submit, I do not constitute the field, although I have harrowed its lengths, its width, with my narrow feet, my slow step. Never mind I hear what scurries or scatters, what burrows or bounds. Never mind I raise my hand to hover the bent grass, the echinaea's bald crown, all of which withers or writhes, all of which is new or nearly the same, before my foot's next fall. I submit, as with the mountain, the field, as with the field, you. Ineluctable as a season, sun ragging the rock face, your arm nearly as long as mine, your palm wider, your mouth a beginning, your eyes, of course, against which everything else is measured. You harrow and the summit writhes, your broad foot falls and the field akimbo gives up its gravity, lets loose its bodies, its bones, thrums an animating light. And to finish us off, this last poem from Donika Kelly called The Moon Rose Over the Bay, I Had a Lot of Feelings. I am taken with the hot animal of my skin, grateful to swing my limbs, and have them move as I intend, though my knee, though my shoulder, though something is torn or tearing. Today, a dozen squid, dead on the harbor beach. One mostly buried, one with skin empty as a shell and hollow feeling. And though the tentacles look soft, I do not touch them. I imagine they were startled to find themselves in the sun. I imagine the tide simply went out without them. I imagine they cannot feel the black flies charting the raised hills of their eyes. I write my name in the sand, Donika Kelly. I watch 18 seagulls skim the sandbar and lift low in the sky. I pick up a pebble that looks like a green egg. To the ditch lily I say, I am in love. To the jeep parked haphazardly on the narrow street, I am in love. To the roses, white petals rimmed brown, to the yellow-lined pavement, to the house trimmed in gold, I am in love. I shout with the rough calculus of walking. Just let me find my way back. Let me move like a tide come in. Thank you, Donika, for leaving us with this message of queer joy and love and connection to the earth and nature. And I really hope that you all really enjoyed listening to the words of these two genius poets and that you go seek them out a little more for yourself. And if you're interested in them, I am going to leave links to ways to read their poetry in our description today. I know that it's short, but thank you so much for joining us. And I hope that you come back next week because we have Mouths of Rain for next week. And I just have to say, I know I already said this at the beginning, but if you haven't started reading it, if you have Kindle Unlimited, it is free. And if not, go pick it up in a bookstore. It is a beautiful, beautiful anthology, and it has a lot of very thought-provoking insights from just so many Black lesbians, and it is so worth reading. So anyway, join us next week, and shout out to Donika Kelly, our Artist of the Week. And I am just so happy that you guys have joined us. Anyway, love you. Bye.